So it was a mixed night for candidates endorsed by former President Trump in Tuesday's primary elections in several states.
And as the results continue to come in, we are getting a better look at the former president's influence over the Republican Party in parts of the country. One of Mr. Trump's biggest wins came from South Carolina. CBS News is projecting Russell Fry will defeat incumbent Congressman Tom Rice in the state's 7th District Republican primary. Rice was one of 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach the former president after the insurrection at the Capitol.
In Texas, Republicans are celebrating after Mayra Flores won last night's special election in the state's 34th district. Her victory signals a possible shift in the district's politics. She will temporarily replace Democratic Congresswoman Philemon Vila, who resigned in March.
Let's bring in CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns for more on this. Caitlin, welcome. A lot to dig into here. First of all, how did former President Trump factor into the outcome in last night's primaries in South Carolina?
Hey, Elaine. Well, we got two different dynamics in two different districts in South Carolina, and we were looking for data points about Trump's influence over the GOP. Let's take Tom Rice, for example. He was one of the 10 Republicans who voted to impeach Donald Trump after the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol. And what happened there was that he was facing a very crowded Republican primary. Former President Trump endorsed one of his opponents who ended up winning in this race. And this was an interesting dynamic because this is a very conservative district in South Carolina. Tom Rice, the incumbent, while he voted to impeach President Trump, he aligned with him on most policy issues. He voted with him most of the time in Congress, shared a lot of the same policy ideals, but was defiant about his vote to impeach the former president. That got him a lot of ire from Trump, who endorsed Fry in that race and really saw this as kind of a vendetta campaign against those who went against him. Now, what's significant about Rice losing is that we've been watching to see kind of the political fallout, the political consequences for these 10 Republicans who voted to impeach former President Trump. 5 of them, or 4 of them are not running again, but 6 of them are. And Rice is the first of that group to lose a primary. So that's important. Now, in another part of South Carolina, in another district, Nancy Mace was successful against a Trump-backed challenger in her primary. Again, a situation where Nancy Mace, as you remember, when she came to Congress in 2020, was very critical of Donald Trump, even though she supported him early on. Very critical of him after the insurrection, very critical of her own party. But as time went on, actually, she became less and less that kind of defiant voice. Instead, she focused on local issues, but also reminded voters that she was a supporter of the former president. In fact, she went to New York this year and taped a video outside Trump Tower saying that, she aligned with Trump on policy, and this was after he endorsed her opponent. I interviewed her last night before the polls closed, and she said that, look, this is a district that is very competitive compared to others in South Carolina. She won it by just 1 point in 2020. So voters in her district, she says, were looking at local issues, the economy, inflation, immigration even, and weren't as concerned as Republicans are elsewhere with relitigating the 2020 results.
And what about over in Texas? Republican Mayra Flores flipped its historically blue 34th district. How and what does that mean for November?
Yeah, Errol, this is a really fascinating race because this is showing warning signs for Democrats heading into this midterm. We've been talking a lot about Republican Party dynamics, but Democrats are also facing a situation where in 2020, Republicans made inroads with Latino voters. And this is a district that is majority Hispanic, and Flores would be the first Mexican-American to serve in Congress. And this is an important district because it's actually going to be changing next time around because of redistricting. So it's going to become more favorable to Democrats. But as the district stands now, because they had to run in a special election to replace an outgoing congressman who retired early, these dynamics portend some warning signs for Democrats as they're trying to compete with Latino voters that they've been losing to Republicans.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you for that analysis.